It's in the quiet moments when our thoughts echo like an empty stadium, and it's just us and the ball. Our heartbeat is the only cheer we hear, and the laced up boots, they're not for applause, but for the love of the game. We dribble, we shoot, we miss, replaying in our heads a mental highlight reel of what was, scanning failures, embracing doubts, challenging our demons. But darkness is our ally. It gives us time to train, hone our skills, master our craft. It's where the foundation of dominance is laid. It's in our hometowns, on the fields where we grew up, where we'll grow stronger to win bigger again and again. It's in the heart of our communities, rooted in the grassroots of America. We are setting the stage for a new global era, all in service to soccer. Every play, every tactic, every practice, every hire is a step closer. Because soccer isn't just in the US. Soccer is US. We have 50 stars on our flag and 330 million more across this nation, all quietly coming together. Because champions aren't built in the spotlight, they're forged in the shadows, in the grind and at the heart of every challenge. We find our true selves. We've stood at the top 4 times in the past, but the best of us is happening now. The world is watching, so let them. Champions are made in silence. A silence that breaks only when the final whistle blows. We're not chasing glory. We're crafting our legacy.
All right, yeah. That doesn't get you fired up. What does? I have goosebumps. I am Stu Holden, and I represented the United States in a World Cup. And so whenever I see these videos and think about young Stu playing soccer at 8, 9 years old, to then see those moments being shared, and what you heard that video talking about as well is, I love, it's something we're going to talk a lot about today, is that soccer has long been viewed as the world's game. Well, soccer is here in the United States, and soccer is here to stay. And we will have the biggest stage, not just in the United States next summer, but in the world. And that will be the World Cup, which really is going to kick off everything that we are talking about. And allow me to introduce to you, heard the quick introduction, Catherine Newman. She's the Chief Marketing Officer for U.S. Soccer. And then Dave Wright over here, the Chief Commercial Officer. And we're going to dig into the business of soccer, U.S. soccer, the World Cup, the Women's World Cup, which was announced will be here in 2031, shared with Jamaica, Costa Rica, and Mexico. And just a really exciting time for soccer in this part of the world. And I want to start, Dave, I've heard you speak a lot about a 100-year startup for U.S. soccer. I've been a part of U.S. soccer many, many years ago now as a player. And I remember a soccer house in Chicago, a handful of employees for the business to where we are now. So when you say a 100-year startup, what do you mean by that?
Well, first, thanks for having us. How many people are excited from that video? Looks like we got some soccer fans in the audience. You know, 100-year startup is actually a good thing. You know, the sport's been around for a long time, but it's only been the last generation or so that we've started to see things really pick up. As I like to say, we have a generation now of fan that doesn't know soccer without MLS, and they don't know soccer without NWSL. So think about that. You can't manufacture history. You know, we were talking before about some of the other countries that have had football for centuries. And so we're playing a little bit of catch up. And I think as an organization, U.S. Soccer is playing a little bit of catch up, but we're gaining fast. And not many people know, as a national governing body, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. So we wake up every single day thinking about how we grow the game at every single level. And just in the last number of years, in less than 3 years, in fact, we have tripled top line revenue. So as I've been very public in saying, there aren't many 100-plus-year-old organizations that have tripled top line revenue, which is critically important as we think about how we grow the game. We've got 27 national teams. We've got 118 member organizations. It takes resources to do that. So when we talk about a 100-year-old startup, we've got great history, But now fast forward, we're as much a sales, media, and marketing company as we are a national governing body, which I think is really good for the sport as we think about growth.
Yeah. Catherine, so much of this growth is fueled by the Men's World Cup, which will be in North America, hosted by US, Mexico, and Canada. But that's not the only event, and you have to be tasked with planning for that, to capture that growth, to capture that momentum, but then also thinking about the run that the United States will have, as well as the 2031 Women's World Cup, which will be hosted here as well. So how do you manage that from a business perspective, and how do you really think about not just next year, but then going forward as a once-in-a-century type opportunity for the organization?
Yeah, it's pretty scary, but it's also very awesome. So, if you look on the screen now where you can see 26, you can see 27 for Brazil, 28 for LA, and then 31 for the women. That is unprecedented in sport. So we've spoken to most agencies asking them to forecast the impact of that. And they said it's unprecedented. It does not exist. And fandom lasts about 90 days after an event. So you don't have long to keep people engaged and interested. So what we're doing is not only trying to make the most of all of these amazing events, but also trying to build fan culture in the US as well. So as Dave says, you can't manufacture history. So if you go to a Premier League game, you know, you'll be sat with someone who's perhaps been going for 50 years. You could go to an MLS or an NWSL game and it's their first one. So how do you explain about the rituals, and how we move forward? So it's really exciting to think about it, which is why for the World Cup, you'll see the best kit we've ever done. You'll see a US soccer mascot. You'll see an anthem song. You'll see all the things that we are doing to build the fan culture, across the US, which is amazing.
Dave, I'd like to dig in a little bit more into the sales, media, and marketing opportunity and the organization and what prompted that switch and that moment to say, look, U.S. soccer has existed, and I think even many people in this room won't be familiar with what U.S. soccer was as a governing body that runs a lot of soccer in this country, but even going to more of a services type industry and servicing soccer in this country, you really spearhead a lot of that. But then the internal growth and the switch to now being able to capitalize on that and to be able to reinvest that in the game. What triggered that moment for the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question, Stu. If I could go one step back, I think, you know, it wasn't that long ago, you know, it's awesome to be up here with Stu, and you think about media and the consumption that we see in this country. By the way, there's more soccer content consumed in the U.S. than any other country around the world. Let that sink in. That's crazy. But it wasn't that long ago that World Cup rights, you couldn't give them away. Now fast forward a generation and, you know, hopefully Fox maintains their media
are you
rights.
throwing me a layup here? We're going to have 69 games on over the air, more games than ever before on television on Fox next summer. I mean, it speaks to the investment we've had, but also the opportunity in the fandom in this country.
Yeah, it speaks to the demand. And so now we find ourselves in an environment where that demand has propelled the sport into a new stratosphere. And a number of years ago, we made a very, very strategic decision to build a commercial business, a business that had been outsourced to a third-party agency. After a pretty thorough review, made the decision, you know what, let's put a stake in the ground, let's build a business. And now fast forward to my earlier comment, 3x top line revenue, over $1 billion of contracted revenue, which is critically important as you think about how you manage your business. It doesn't matter if you're a national governing body or you're an apparel brand or whatever, having the ability to think ahead and know that you've got predictable revenue is really important. So, we look back and it was the right decision. And while I might be a little biased, I actually, am a little surprised at how successful we have been. But I think again, it speaks to the testament of the demand and candidly the people that we've hired to build the business.
Yeah. Speaking of the people, you have been with the business for 18 months. Catherine is the Chief Marketing Officer of U.S. Soccer, a position that did not exist before you got to the business. So I think it also speaks to the evolution of a company and recognizing they need somebody like you in that position to tell the stories, to make sure everybody understands what U.S. Soccer is. So from your perspective, what have you kind of been tasked with early when you got here? What didn't you expect to then now what are you doing? As you said, some of the challenges of all the things you have to do, but to really focus on a big event that comes next year.
Yeah, so we were a small but mighty team, but we've had to significantly grow it. So no doubt, for those of you that keep an eye on jobs in sport and some of the best jobs in sport, you'll see a lot of them have been at US Soccer. So we've been building up our function. We moved in the communications team so that we had a holistic view across everything that we were doing within marketing. But when we interview someone, the brief is very clear. Do you want to be associated with the fastest growing sport in the US? Do you want to be part of cultural change in the US? Do you want to build a home for soccer in the US? So we've never had a home before. We are now building the National Training Center in Trilith.
So jealous, by the way.
A bit different to
Look
what
at this.
you
Yeah,
say.
we got some images here of the new National Training Center. Not that we slummed it back in my day, back in the early 2010s, but that would have been an absolute dream to have had that resource as a player. And
it is amazing. As a marketer, you don't often get asked to be involved in something this monumental, to help influence how we're all working on building the home of soccer in America. But also we've had 2 new coaches while we've been there in the past year who are phenomenal. So we are doing a lot to focus on as much as we can with the fans, but also to make sure that we're getting the basics right, but also building culture. When you work with consumers, when you work with subscribers and you work with fans are very, very different. They're intergenerational, and it's a privilege to call someone a fan. So it's also part of how we're earning that every single day. But it has meant that we've had to change. So our content and social, for example, is considerably different from what we used to do before. So we have 27 national teams. We have 118 members. So we will be one of the biggest storytelling machines in sport by the time that we have built our content studio in Trilith. So it's a really big brief for everyone involved in the team, but it's something which is once in a generation. So it's a real privilege for all of us to be here.
Catherine, you're a moderator's dream. You just set me up with my transitions to our next subject, which is you guys have a couple of announcements to make on that front. And Dave, I want to start with you about the affiliate network that is part of the U.S. Soccer family now and what you're trying to do as well as being able to tell your story. So talk to us a little bit about that and your plans for that going forward.
Yeah. So right now there's 130 million fans of the game in the U.S. That doesn't mean 130 million fans of U.S. soccer. So it serves as a massive opportunity as we think about the runway that Catherine talked about over the next 6 years. That number is expected to grow to be well north of 150 million fans. So massive opportunity. We obviously have great media partners in Warner Brothers Discover TNT, NBCU, Telemundo, Westwood One English Radio, and Football Day Primera Spanish language radio. And then obviously we're pumping out content every single day. But how do you grow that? How do you extend the reach to reach as many of the 130, soon to be 150 million? And so as part of the plan, we are now in the process of aggregating other partners in the media space that will come under the U.S. Soccer affiliate network that will give us immediate scale. So think about OneFootball, think about Snap, think about other social and content platforms that now will be waking up thinking about U.S. Soccer content and helping to tell our story. The world's a lot smaller through content. And, we see it as an incredible engine to educate, but also inspire the next generation, which is going to be a massive priority, not only over the next 231 days, by the way, 231 days until the World Cup, but far beyond. So really something we're really excited about.
Yeah. Catherine, can you expand as well on the content studio to that point of what that gives you an opportunity to do as well, what you're going to have at Trilith? And it wasn't even anything on our radar. I mean, we used to host Studio 90 on the road. There would be a small content media team that would travel. We'd do interviews. And I grew up in an era of U.S. soccer where we would talk to anybody that would listen to us about soccer in our country. We were out in the local news. We were trying to do anything at local news stations, media partnerships, community service. We wanted to tell soccer's story. You came as well from an English background where it's like everybody's telling your story for you. In this country, it's very different. And as much as it's changed, there still is that challenge, as David was alluding to there a little bit, of there's all these soccer fans, but how do you convert them to U.S. soccer fans? And you feel you have a real opportunity through the content studio you'll have.
Yeah, we do. And the fans are very hungry for content. As Dave said, there is so much content already produced, but people are hungry for more. And being the national team and for all our 27 national teams, we're very lucky because we're in the rooms that nobody else is. So we see the heartache, we see the joys and tribulations. You know what it's like when you're in camp and you've got a few matches coming up. We have a unique ability to tell an amazing story. So part of the National Training Centre is not only having that performance area for our players, but also having a content studio in order to be able to tell those stories. And we're really lucky because if you can imagine, we're based in Trillis, so we have some of the best studios in the world there as well. So it's a real intersection between entertainment and sport. We are based on the studio lot at the moment, so it's fun to see what goes on there on a daily basis. But we will be sat in a meeting at the National Training Centre and we will see the national teams training right in front of us. So it is our duty to tell that story because it's so awesome. And also it's not just about the game. If I think about our extended national teams, there are many challenges that people have gone through in order to be able to be called a player, in order to be able to play as part of the team. And that's hugely inspiring to our fans. And when we looked at the psychology of what the fans wanted, and what was really driving that content consumption, it was around a sense of belonging, an autonomy and a competence. And they're saying, educate me about the game, because it's always more than 90 minutes. It's always more than 90 minutes. So anyone who knows soccer or football, it's always more than that. So the content studio will be awesome. But also it will be the most accessible studio in sports. So we have, futsal players, power soccer, our deaf team, our cerebral palsy team. There should be no barriers to any of the storytelling that we're doing. So the studio and the National Training Centre is built with full accessibility in mind, which is something we're really proud of.
And I think something that really speaks to the way that you're framing and looking at the business, but U.S. soccer and being in service to the sport is what you see a lot through your brand partnerships, which is these are not just businesses and partnerships that are looking at consumers. They're looking at fans deeply connected with U.S. soccer that are really invested in what you're doing. And I think you see that in some of your partnerships. And I'm curious, whether it's Bank of America or Volkswagen, it feels like the partnerships and sponsorships that you have are really investing in not just being a logo up on an ad board. They're invested in deeply being a part of these partnerships. It's something I've really seen happen over the past couple of years.
Yeah, and we've got a couple colleagues here and Dan Gaiman and Brian Glenn who have been a really important piece to building that strategy. We knew early on that the ability to align with the right brands really matters. And we often talk a lot about purpose-driven partnerships. And if you think about the marketplace today, and there's probably some brands here, sure, you want to sell widgets. Everyone needs to sell your widget or your service, but you want to stand for something more. And I think we've done a very good job of being that platform that allows a brand to do more and to do good. So you think about Bank of America, it's all about community, and how are they giving back? How are they using their resources to eliminate barriers? You think about Volkswagen. Volkswagen, interestingly, was the first partner that allowed us to broadcast our deaf national team. So we actually had a double header between our women's national team in Australia and our deaf national team and the Australian deaf national. That does not happen without the support and resources of Volkswagen. So those are two examples of many of brands that, they're going to invest significantly, but it's so much more than that. And then when you think about it from a marketing perspective, these brands are spending billions of dollars every single year. So our ability to work with them to help tell our story, again, to extend our message is really, really powerful and a big, big part of our growth.
Yeah. We think about that a lot on the broadcast side. And when we're, for example, doing a World Cup match next summer, live on the Fox network, opening up with the United States and the World Cup on day 2 of the tournament, we know our viewership on that given day is going to be 100x of what our normal soccer viewership is in the country. And so we try to think through that lens of how do we talk to that viewer? How do we meet that viewer where they're at? How do we get that person inside the tent, keep them inside the soccer tent? And I think a lot about your fans that you've had. There's been U.S. soccer fans that will be old enough to have watched me play back in the day. There'll be fans that only know, what we do now as broadcasters, but you have found ways to connect with fans and incentivize them through your Insiders program, Soccer House next year, for example, at the World Cup. Can you speak a little bit about that and how you give a little bit to the core fan and then you can grow that fan base as well with all the things that you're doing in that connection?
Yeah, so as I say, we don't underestimate the value of our fans, and so we are bringing them into the tent as much as we can. So we have a fan council who keep us very honest. So, for example, our World Cup campaign, the first people who saw it was them. We wanted to know their view because if it didn't connect with them, it didn't matter.
Have they seen the jersey, by the way?
They have seen the jersey.
Oh, and nobody's leaked it yet? Would you take all the cell phones away and...
We trust them implicitly. So they've been instrumental in that. And they help us with pricing for tickets. So, for example, we did a pricing offer with American Outlaws, so that we made sure that it was affordable to be able to go. If I think of our women's game against Brazil in SoFi in April, that was one of the most affordable matches that has ever been had at SoFi. And it's an incredibly important part for us because fandom is about repeated behavior. And it's about loyalty and it's about that depth of emotion. And so we need to make it as accessible as we can. So it's incredibly important to us. So they have been a part of everything that we do. And actually, we've just hired somebody new in our team who their sole job is to work with our supporter groups. We've never had that before. And it's interesting, as sport, we talk a lot about fans, but actually how much do you have them in the room? How much are they part of what you're doing? So we're trying to do an awful lot with them as well. And they keep us honest. They tell us when we're doing it well. They tell us when we're not doing it well. We track the sentiment. We try and stay in lockstep. But yeah, it's pretty awesome working with them.
Yeah. And David, I said you want to meet fans where they're at as well. How do you do that in their communities, in stadiums, online? You talked a little bit about, content makes the world small. I agree with that. It gives people access. It makes them feel a part of it. So what are some of the other things you're doing in stadium, out of stadium, where, as you said, the game is 90 minutes, but it lives much longer beyond that. And you're actually doing a lot of the work before and after the game to make sure that fan gets there, they're engaged, and then they take a good experience away after the game as well.
Yeah. So can we have a little fun? Right
Yeah.
now?
Well, we like fun.
Show of hands. How many people are currently fans of soccer? Raise your hand. Proudly.
Oh, great audience.
Okay. Good.
We're going to convert those of you that kept your hands down. So.
I don't know. Was that 70, 80%?
Yeah.
Okay. So 20 years ago, it would have been a third of that. So again, we're making great progress, but we know there's a lot more to be done. In terms of how we drive that meaningful engagement, first, we average 20 to 25 senior national team games a year between men and women. Those are incredible events in markets throughout the country that for many people might be the only opportunity for them to go see a national team game. And through research, we know that if you attend a game, you're 3 to 4 times more likely to be a fan for an extended period of time. We spend a lot of time talking about content and storytelling. I often look through the lens of our kids. We've got 2 kids that play soccer collegiately. If I were to ask our son Braden to name his 5 favorite NBA players, he could do it by position. Now here's a soccer kid that's never played basketball. Well, how is he doing that? He's doing it because it's part of his every day. It's the NBA does an incredible job of storytelling. If you're a fan of the Golden State Warriors, you're probably a fan of Steph Curry, right? So we have an enormous opportunity. And one of the many reasons why we're investing in the Morecambe's function is we need to tell these stories. We've got incredible world-class athletes that apply their trade domestically and with some of the biggest clubs around the world. They need to be household names. And the day that they walk down Fifth Avenue and they're recognized is the day that we have arrived. We're not quite there yet. You might be able to walk down Fifth Avenue, but that will be an indicator for us.
Yeah.
And so as we think about our matches, we think about impacting community, we think about storytelling, all of that feeds into our 365-day approach.
And the big moment though is the World Cup. I actually remember after 2014, Tim Howard had that game where he saved, I think 16 saves against Belgium, and we were in West Hollywood, LA, partying after the tournament. And a TMZ guy came over and stopped them, and there was a tour bus, and there was like this whole hoopla, and none of us had ever felt that before in this country. And that's when you realize, as it has been for many of the soccer players in America, your opportunity is every 4 years. And that's when you're on not just the national stage, you're on a global stage. And if we can even help tell those stories as well from a broadcast perspective, that's what we do. So much so, even now you see all these, the rise of F1 has been an interesting case study because of the Drive to Survive documentary. You guys are working on a documentary centered around the men's national team in the lead up to the World Cup. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we've had cameras in for the past 5 years, when we get there. So we will have 6 episodes coming out with HBO Max, 5 before the World Cup, 1 post to see how it all ends. And it's fantastic because it talks about the journey that the players go on. And whatever we think about athletes, and you all know this obviously far better than us, what you see on camera is great. What you see on the pitch, how they perform, but there is so much that goes into the journey. There is so much sacrifice from the families, from the friends and everything that they go through. So we're super, super excited because it tells the story of MNT from the last World Cup to now, which will be awesome. So again, we'll be doing some previews and some exciting stuff with our partners and our fans. But it's also because we want people to get closer to the players. So that's why occasionally now we're opening up training. So Emma Hayes hosted over 200 fans in training, so they could see everything that was happening pre-match. We had our insiders lounge with American Airlines at our last match, and the lounge was split across the tunnel. So as the players came out, they are high-fiving our fans. Now, you can't get closer than that. That's pretty good.
To do these things, though, and I've found this in my history, it also is dependent on the coach understanding what's at stake, the vision, because to open up your locker room doors, and locker rooms are typically viewed as sacred places, and you want to be able to say things and do things without the watchful eyes of cameras. So I think it goes back to what you touched on a little bit. You've hired 2 people, not just because they're going to open their doors. They're phenomenal coaches. They're world-class coaches. You went out and made an investment in the biggest and the best on the men's and the women's side from a coaching perspective. But to get that buy-in, I think when you hire a coach, David, when I'm going to go on Mauricio Pochettino here, he comes from a European background of coaching. That would never happen there. It's only recently happened a little bit with some clubs in England. But he seems to understand the responsibility of coaching a team, but also where soccer is in America right now and trying to grow the sport as well as getting performances on the field.
Yeah, I think in both cases of Mauricio and Emma, I mean, these are 2 of the best coaches in the world, period, end of story, that have choices. I mean, they could literally go anywhere, and they have chosen to come to the U.S. in part because it's an incredible opportunity, but they also know they can have a real impact. And, you know, we spend quite a bit of time with Mauricio and his team and Emma and her team, and they're all in, and they understand the importance of telling the story, which is a big part of, you know, our strategy going forward. And it's also worth mentioning, you know, we're really excited about the documentary on the men's side, but there's also going to be a documentary on the women's side as well. As you think about 27, as you think about LA 28, as you think about 2031, and you're right, Stu, those don't happen without the buy-in of the coaches. And we're really, really fortunate to have 2 that get it.
Yeah. I want to pivot over to, you have a lot of supportive partners. You also have a lot of individuals in this country that are philanthropic, but also see the opportunity of where soccer can be with the right investment on the men's side. But then I'm going to hone in a little bit more on the women's side. Now, we have been a leader in women's sports, in women's soccer specifically. We have carried the torch for a lot of women's soccer. We have been the best team, and we still are the best team. I will believe that till the day I die. Even though we lost 1 World Cup in Australia, we came back and we won the Olympics in 2024 in Paris. But Michelle Kang is a prominent businesswoman who has invested so much money in women's soccer. She gifted the Federation $30 million as part of an initiative to create over 100,000 opportunities for young girls. When you have somebody like that, and I got to spend some time with her in LA at that match at SoFi Stadium, she cares so much about it. But what can something like that do from a monetary standpoint, but also having somebody like Michelle involved and behind you guys and your mission of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, she is phenomenal. I have to say, a real advocate, not just of soccer, but of women's sports globally. She is a real trailblazer in that respect. And her and Emma are almost kindred spirits, because it's actually how can soccer help inform women's sports globally, which is really exciting. I mean, we, being a non-profit, we do rely on donations. And the good thing about somebody like Michelle Kang is that it's not just, may I give you money and means in which to do something, but let me talk to you about the people that I have that share your vision. Let me talk to you about the introductions that I can make. Let me talk to you about the vision which I have. Because when we talk about a level playing field in sport, the women have done amazingly well. And as you say, we have the best women's team in the world. But there's still more to do. There's always more that we could be doing. And so she is not just someone that has given us the means, but is also an amazing thought partner. And she is one of other donors. Arthur and Blank is a fantastic supporter of US soccer as well. And we don't just work with them, we work with their teams. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's a real privilege.
Speaking of, did you have something to add, Dave?
Well, I was just going to add, I think Michelle's an incredible example of when you have a vision, when you have great leadership, and you have resources, what you can do. I think back to a couple of years ago, it wasn't that long ago that the equal pay collective bargaining agreements were finalized. So U.S. Soccer, some may not know, is the only sport organization that has equal pay for men and women. So that was, thank you.
Yeah. Awesome.
You know, our women have been the best on the field for generations, and now they've paved the way off the field. And that is an incredible testament to who they are, what they represent, but also creating positive change. And equally as important, sure, it was really important for sport, but to see the impact it's had off the field is so powerful. And I know it makes me proud. I'm sure it makes you very proud that we work for an organization that paved the way for others to follow. And Michelle is another great example of, you know, someone that buys into the vision, wants to create impact, and brings resources to help us do just that.
Well, I can attest to that. I have a 9-year-old daughter who is a avid soccer player, avid soccer fan, and she sees these women national team players as athletes, but as role models, and they're an inspiration for what they do on and off the field, but also with the opportunity to do so and to have that platform. And at the heart of that, you do have a leader in Emma Hayes. And I was at the National Coaches Convention, and I had an opportunity to sit in the crowd as a non-media member and just listen to Emma. And she is a fantastically brilliant individual. And I was captivated by her ability to articulate her vision, her plan, her leadership, everything that she does on and off the field. So much so is one of her favorite lines I love from her is that, you know, everything we have done in the sport when it comes from sports science and the way we've looked at it has all been through a male dominant lens. And she wants to flip that and think about how can we tackle ACL injuries, which are very prominent on the women's side. So when you have a leader that is so strong and so bought into what you're doing, what power does that give you as an organization to go out and amplify that effort?
Yeah, it's, I mean, firstly, it inspires the staff. So, Emma, came and spoke at our She Believes Summit. And then we had a conference around female leadership and female sportsmanship. And she invited every female member of staff at US Soccer. It wasn't a sporting conference. It was a conference about through the female lens. And that was amazing. So she is a cultural change maker. But a consensus builder at the same time. So she manages to do both. But it's interesting when I said to her, like, how did you get our team to that place? How did we get to win? And she was like, because true leadership, true battle is up here. She was like, I'm not going to tell Trinity Rodman to kick the ball harder because she's pretty good at what she does already. But actually, can I help her go harder, go faster, and to set an example? Yes, I can. And so it's phenomenal. So she is able to captivate any room. She understands the journey of a youth player all the way up to a senior player. She's hugely supportive of the NWSL, all our youth partnerships. all of that, which is absolutely fantastic. But she is able to build a narrative that not only the players believe in, but people outside of sport can also understand and buy into as well. So they want to be part of it.
Yeah. The highest rated soccer match we've had in Fox Sports history and soccer history in the United States was the Women's World Cup final on Fox Network in 2015 when they won that World Cup up in Canada. And, you know, you can feel even just the momentum that builds off the back of that. And it pivots me over to what we're going to see next summer right here, as we've referenced, which will be the biggest, the best, the biggest media event, not just here in the United States, but in the world, as we've talked about. But with all of these games now being on broadcast television and an opportunity for so many fans to connect with soccer for the first time, how excited does that make you from your perspective, from a commercial perspective? But then, again, we've talked about it a little bit, but what are the things that you can do to make sure that you guys meet that moment right where it's at? No pressure, by the way.
Yeah, well, it makes me giddy. It makes me more than excited. It makes me giddy. I think, you know, to think that we'll have 48 countries, that for a split moment, all 48 have a glimmer of hope they're going to win a World Cup trophy. And no other country around the world is as diverse as the U.S. You'll see 48 communities come together that will all get behind their team, and for that one moment, hope that they can capture World Cup glory. For us, it will represent, without question, the largest sporting event of all time by far. It won't even be close. And it's a global spotlight on the game in this country. And so you're going to see, as I mentioned earlier, you know, fans grow to be 150. You're going to see a lot of fans that will be introduced to the game for the first time. So in terms of what we hope for, we hope our men perform well. And
It's amazing how important that is.
Yeah, it does matter. And I think they will perform well. And depending on how far they go into the tournament, and by the way, we're one of those 48 that has that hope. And our ability to capture the spirit of that hope, I think, is going to be really important. You know, we were at an event on Monday in New York celebrating and announcing the 2031 Women's World Cup that will be hosted in the U.S., Mexico, Costa Rica, and Jamaica. And it was interesting to hear Kelly O'Hara talk about that 99 team and the impact that the 99ers had on her, who then went on to have a Hall of Fame career for our women's national team. There's going to be a lot of Kelly O'Haras out there that, you know, will see the sport and look up and say, you know what, I want to be that. Boys, girls. And that is so special. And that opportunity doesn't come around very often. And it's going to be really, really cool to see it come to fruition. And then it'll be up to us to capture it.
Well, you know, it's perfect because this audience, and as we walk around here at NAB, there's so many people here. We live in an attention economy these days, right? Everybody's fighting for eyeballs, whether that's on TV, content, devices, social media. Sports are one thing that unify, that bring people together. It's an event that you want to watch with your family, your friends. You're going to sit in front of that TV for 90 minutes and you're going to be dialed in. And so it's our job as broadcasters, it's our job in service to soccer to make sure for that 90 minutes you understand what it's like, and then you come back and you stay with us. As we start to wind down here, Catherine, if there's something that you want people to take away and to remember about U.S. soccer's journey, I know you've been a part of this story for 18 months. And when you contextualize that with a 100-year-old startup that's been around, and I've seen different iterations, and it's existed many years before I got there, and we all hope to leave it in a better place going forward. What would be that thing that you hope people take away when they think about U.S. soccer and its journey?
Well, firstly, come to a game. Come and experience it for yourself. This crest, the one I'm wearing, this is the women's crest. We also have
my son likes to remind me it's the only one with stars.
Yes, indeed. My daughters remind their father of that as well. So come to a game, come and experience it for yourself. Soccer is the greatest sport in the world. I have to say, I'm biased, but it is, and it's doing wonders in America. We are launching our Soccer Forward legacy initiative for the World Cup, so we will be growing soccer in every community across America. So, and remember the benefits of soccer. It brings leaders. There's health benefits. There's mental health benefits, and in this attention economy where there is so much content, getting outside with a ball and playing for 90 minutes does blow those cobwebs away. So come out and support us. The men and women are fantastic on the field. They are real heroes in the US. And you'll have a lot of fun doing it.
You know, the English have a national stadium where they play all of their home matches. It's Wembley Stadium. It's iconic. It's been a part of the national history for many years. And I get often asked as well, why does the US not have a national stadium? And I say, well, I actually prefer what we have, which is we take our national team games around the country. And so people have access and opportunity to see a women's game in Denver, a men's game in New York, a men's game in Orlando, a qualifier. There's going to be a women's game tomorrow night in Philadelphia, for example. And so access for us is still paramount to growing the game and bringing in new fans. David, if you had a call to action for broadcasters, partners, fans, brands, with a view on 26, but then also going forward and the opportunity that presents itself for us being soccer people, but sports fans and the world that we live in, what would that be?
To lean in and stand tall. You know, when I asked how many fans there were, it was really interesting to see not only the numbers, but actually people were proud to say that they were a fan. And so I would encourage folks to celebrate your fandom. You know, Catherine talked about celebrating the men and women's national teams, but go to an MLS game, go to an NWSL game, go to a USL game. You know, there is soccer in every community. Go to a college game, which is burgeoning. You know, there's soccer in every community. Celebrate your fandom, bring other people along, lean in and stand tall. And for those brands and media partners, now's the time. You know, it's well documented. It's not a charity investment. This is real business, and double down. And we're seeing that happen time and time again in our business and throughout the soccer marketplace in this country.
Yeah, it's so true. And when I bring friends for the first time who are sports fans, they come to a soccer game, they're blown away by the type of experience. I think the closest we have in this country from a soccer fandom, international soccer fandom, is probably college sports. When you think about that tribalism and how people support their teams, and you'll feel that at a national team game. If you come to a World Cup match, the first thing people talk about is the fans and the singing, the chanting. And I just know from a player's perspective how much that used to drive me forward. And it's so cool to be able to share those experiences. So first of all, I want to thank both of you for your time, for coming out here and for speaking. Thank you for what you're doing on behalf of U.S. soccer and soccer in America. Thank you all for spending a couple of minutes. I know, again, in attention economy, that you came over and spent some time with us on this panel. Both of these brilliant individuals are driving so much of the good force with U.S. soccer, and we can't wait to be a big part of that from a Fox Sports perspective next summer. 104 matches. I'm tired just thinking about it, but it's going to be the biggest and best thing I know I will do in my broadcasting career. And again, 94 was the last time we hosted a men's World Cup in this country. It is still to date the highest attended World Cup in the history of World Cups. Next year is just going to blow that out of the water from a in-stadium and from a TV perspective as well. So thank you again, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference and have a good day.